This is New Amsterdam Vape, and in this video, I'll be reviewing the Crius Plus RTA by OBS. The Crius Plus is a larger version of the original Crius RTA by OBS. The Crius Plus has a striking resemblance to the Griffin 25, as well as other rebuildable tanks of this caliber, and it shares most every feature as these tanks with a few extras. This version of the tank comes with interchangeable decks with a lot of space for large coil builds, as well as an additional top airflow. The Crius Plus is 25mm in diameter and 62mm from the base of the deck to the top of the drip tip, with a liquid capacity of 5.8 milliliters. Included with the tank is a spare glass, spare O-rings, spare screws with an Allen screwdriver, a plug for single coil use on the atomizer, organic cotton, and 2 pre-made clapped-in coils. The tank breaks down into the deck, the chamber that goes over the deck, the glass chamber, the top piece, the adjustable airflow ring for the top airflow, and a Delrin drip tip. The deck of the Crius Plus is very similar to the Griffin 25, but it's slightly larger with a diameter of 18mm. This larger deck size makes larger builds much easier to fit into the tank. The Crius Plus also has larger air holes than the Griffin 25. But unlike the Griffin, the ring around the deck on the Crius is not removable. The Crius Plus comes with a spare deck piece that allows for more than dual coil building. With this, you can build larger quad coil builds, which is a nice feature but seems really like overkill for an RTA. I prefer single coil builds in my tanks, so a quad coil build seems excessive, but there are people out there who are looking for RDA performance with a tank capacity. Looking at the tank up close, it's a fairly large tank overall. There's 4 smaller air holes around the deck. The ring on the airflow is adjustable, but it does not spin freely, only opening and closing all the way. The top of the tank has another airflow ring with 3 small airflow slots. This allows for an airier draw and helps with cloud production. The ring spins freely around the top of the tank. When the drip tip is removed, the top airflow ring can be removed, showing the 2 O-rings that hold it in place. There's a marker on the tank that indicates the location of the liquid filling slot at the top. Pull up the top of the tank to reveal the slot. There's only 1 slot on the tank, but it's large enough to fit most any glass dropper or bottle to fill the tank fairly easily. The pin on the 510 connection is not adjustable, and protrudes out from the connection only slightly. I would highly advise against using this tank with a hybrid mechanical mod. I had no issue with this tank sitting flush and making connection on my IPv4S or my cuboid. Gripping both ends of the tank, you can spin the chamber around the deck. This allows you to throttle the liquid flowing into the 4 liquid slots on the chamber. If you're using a thinner liquid, you'll want to close down the slots or close them off completely while you fill the tank with liquid. Looking at the deck, it's almost identical to previous versions of the Crius as well as the Griffin tank, but the deck is removable. Simply unscrew the deck and you can replace the Velocity style post with the special quad coil post design. I prefer the Velocity style post over the quad coil post, and honestly avoided using the quad post. It's nice to have, but it's not something I would ever want to use. The quad post deck has a large gold connector at the bottom to make connection to the rest of the deck, though the Velocity style deck does not have the same type of connector. The insulator on the Velocity deck is still a ceramic insulator and not a PEEK insulator. If the ceramic insulator breaks, then this deck is a dud. The silicone plug included with the tank fits into the airflow hole and the 2 wicking slots. This is a great addition for anyone who prefers single coil builds, but the plug does stop the airflow on one side, so the airflow will be cut in half. The glass wall is kept between 2 O-rings between the chamber and the top of the deck, and it removes fairly easily. There's a bit of grip around the top of the tank, as well as the large size, which makes taking this tank apart very simple. The screws on the Velocity posts are Allen screws. Be careful when using the screwdriver and screws since they're prone to stripping if you tighten the screws down too much. I'll make a dual coil build using the 2 clapped-in coils that came with the tank. With all the screws loosened, I'll slide in the arms of the coil into the bottom right hole and the top left hole of the post. I'll tighten each side slightly. As I tighten the leads, the coil will start to spread apart slightly, but this is easily fixable. Using wire clippers, I'll cut the leads as close as possible to the posts, so there isn't any hanging out that can cause a short. I'll insert the second coil and repeat the process on the other side. I'll use the wire clippers to carefully cut the leads as close as possible to the posts, but be careful to avoid cutting the other coil. Now that the coils are in place, I'll do a few pulse fires to make sure the coils are malleable. I'll use the ceramic tweezers to mold the coils and pinch them together as I pulse fire. I'll also use this 3mm diameter coil jig piece and slide them into the coils to help them retain their circular shape. I'll keep pulse firing and molding the coils until they're pressed together the way I want them. With the coils all set, now it's time to wick. I'll use the organic cotton that came with the tank, which comes in one very long sheet. I'll cut off just a few inches of the cotton and then split this cotton in half to make the two wicks. When I make my wicks, I like to use a sort of Scottish wicking method, but with less cotton. I'll spread out the cotton so there's some space in between the fibers and then gently roll it up. The space in the fibers helps to let the liquid flow up the wicks and the air to flow out into the tank more easily. If the cotton is too tight or compacted, it can obstruct the flow. I'll slide the wick into the coil, gently pulling it back and forth as I find a spot that's not too snug but not too loose. I'll do the same on the other side. I like to trim the wicks so they're just about long enough to reach the base of the wicking slots. I'll cut all 4 arms off the wicks around the same length. Using tweezers, I'll push the arms into the wicking slots. Make sure the cotton isn't too compacted in the slots, otherwise it'll block the flow of the liquid. It's a delicate balance that you have to find with the wicks, so you don't get dry hits or flooding. On the other side, the cotton is looking a little bit too thick, so I'll trim off a bit to thin it down. Once they're trimmed down, I'll slide them into the wicking slots. Prime the wicks with liquid and be sure to get plenty of liquid on the Clapton coils. Clapton coils have a lot more surface area than regular coils and lots of space in between the loops, which take up a lot of liquid. Also put liquid into the wicking slots as well. Do a few pulse fires, which helps get rid of the cotton taste with fresh wicks. I'll do a few pulse fires watching the liquid in the wicking slots. You want to make sure that as the wicks get dry, they're pulling up the liquid out of the wicking slots. Watch all 4 slots as you pulse fire. If one has more liquid than the other, then the wick may be too thick and isn't allowing the liquid to flow up as easily as the other sides. With the coils set and the wicks primed, place on the rest of the tank. It's good practice to check the coils again after placing on the rest of the tank to make sure that there isn't a short from the coils touching the chamber. Now I'll pull up the top of the tank to fill the tank with liquid. Make sure the wicking slots are closed before filling the tank up with liquid. The Crius Plus tank has a very large liquid capacity, so it takes a bit to fill it to the top. When I fill it, I tilt the tank so the air escapes from the hole and fill it until the liquid is just at the hole. The dual Clapton coils came out to 0.6 ohms, and I tested the Crius Plus between 20 to 60 watts. I found it was best for me between 35 to 40 watts. There's a lot of cloud production with this tank. Both the airflow options allow for some big clouds, but does not leave much in the way of flavor. That much airflow really kills the flavor. The top airflow is great for clouds, but not much else. I prefer using the tank with the top airflow closed and the bottom airflow slightly closed off at the 35 watt range. It may not make the biggest clouds, but it was an enjoyable vape. Moving on to the pros and cons. As a pro, the Crius Plus is a great cloud producing RTA that rivals similar RTAs on the market. Though it's extremely similar to the Griffin and other tanks, the coil options do set it apart, which brings me to my next pro. There's a lot of coil options to choose from. Specifically, I'm really happy that they included the single coil option, and if you were so inclined, you could go as far as a quad coil build. The Crius Plus definitely has the airflow to support that many coils. The price is another pro. This tank is in the $30 range, which is a good deal for a great tank that comes with a lot of extras. I like when tanks include coils so you can get to vaping right away. If you order the Crius Plus from heavengifts.com, you can get 10% off your purchase with the coupon code ANEWAMSTERDAM. Moving on to the cons, this tank does get very hot when chain vaping. With the dual coil build alone, the base of the tank would get extremely hot, but not the top of the tank. If a dual coil build is pushing the deck to extremely high temperatures, then I feel the quad coil deck would push it even higher. Part of me feels that the way the Velocity deck is designed is causing it to heat up at the bottom. Something about that contact and the way it connects might be causing it to get extremely hot. I feel the coil options are a pro, mainly for the single coil to dual coil options, but frankly I feel the quad coil option is overkill as well as the top airflow. If you're a flavor chaser, then both of these will do nothing for you. This is a great cloud chasing tank, but I feel cloud chasing is overshadowing flavor chasing in the vaping market. Once again, the Allen screws and the screwdriver are prone to stripping. The screwdriver is a little flimsy, so if you use too much force, you'll find yourself with a broken tool and screws stuck in the deck. Overall, the Crius Plus tank is a really great cloud chasing tank that easily rivals the Griffin and other comparable tanks out there. While I'm not too crazy about the cloud chasing craze with tanks these days, I do really like that they're ditching the 22mm diameters in favor of larger tanks that can give me more liquid capacity. If you're a cloud chaser and want a break from your drippers, then this is definitely a tank for you. But if you're a flavor chaser, then I suggest you keep looking. This is New Amsterdam Vape, and if you found this video helpful, please like, comment, and subscribe.